And obviously I'll send you the slides afterwards as well. So there's basically, obviously collaboration, partnership, working is a big sort of trend over recent years. We're going to look at different types of collaboration and partnership working amongst the VCS groups and some of the benefits. So obviously bear in mind things like funders, they're very interested in projects demonstrating efficiency, and they want to avoid duplication of services, so they don't want to be funding things that are already funded. So that's why if there are similar groups doing similar things, it's going to sort of increase your chance of success if you can come together and work in partnership to apply together to avoid that problem of different groups duplicating the same services. Obviously, some funders are encouraging groups to apply to work together. They want to see more partnership working, particularly with the smaller groups. And obviously, you can do things like sharing resources. Another way of obviously, increasing efficiency. And there's a kind of policy context in terms of over the last sort of few years, more public services being opened up to be commissioned out. So it has created new funding opportunities for the voluntary sector. Unfortunately, the kind of the larger contracts require sort of more resources to be able to write the bids and deliver the contract terms. So it has slightly favoured larger companies, charities. Obviously, things like Groundwork spring to mind. Organisations like Groundwork spring to mind. And obviously, I think that smaller organisations are often too small to be eligible to bid. But that's where there's the sort of benefit of coming together, small groups coming together in consortia bids, with other charities, possibly even private companies. I think the issue with this is obviously it requires a lot of work to come together and then put a bid in, and obviously there's no chance, there's no guarantee of success. So it does kind of mean that it can be a risk to sort of come together, put all this work in, and then not get anything out of it. So I think that's kind of why there needs to be more support. And I think Hounslow Council has been working in this area with BME groups as to how they can sort of be ready to bid for commissioning opportunities should they arise. But I mean, that's slightly different to sort of just general grant funding, where obviously the application process is a bit more straightforward. So sort of stages of collaboration requires investment of time and resources, preparation, understanding of the processes involved, help bring about a greater chance of success. So firstly, you think carefully about whether collaborative working is appropriate for your organisation. Be clear about the goals to identify and approach the most appropriate partner organisations. Work closely with the partners to develop your collaboration. So things like shared aims, structures and agreements. Developing positive relationships. I think that's key, is like you need for there to be trust between organisations to be able to work effectively. There needs to be those positive relationships. So obviously we try and offer that context through networking sessions for relationships to be built between groups. I know our Cash BME network has been quite successful in that department of getting people from across different organisations across Ealing and Hounslow boroughs to, I think even Richmond as well, to talk. And I think Lisa's had some, at one of the meetings, got some sort of partnership work with the Richmond group. So that's kind of what we need to build more on, I think, in future, is getting more of those relationships between groups, and that's going to enable more collaborative working to take place. So recommending things like having a strong action plan, communications plan, prepare for possible frustrating times with effective problem solving, be aware of key challenges that may arise, then review your collaborative experience, prepare a forward strategy. So some of the things to think about, what are you hoping to achieve through a collaboration? Ensure that collaborative working is the best way to achieve the same. Crucially, to things like chief trustees and chief executives support the idea. If you're a charity, does it fit in with your organisation's charitable objects as stated in the governing document? Do the plans for collaborative working fit your strategic vision, values, and priorities? And obviously, if you're a charity, think about the trustees' role. Trustees have a remit to act in the best interests of your organisation and its beneficiaries. So that's where you need to have that shared aim if it's different organisations coming together, working collaboratively. The final decision on any major change to your work rests with trustees, and they will have ultimate responsibility for the collaborative working arrangements. It's their role to see that the decision-making process covers all angles to make the most effective use of funds. And also trustees must ensure their organisation acts legally and that professional advice is taken where relevant. So you need to look at what your governing document says about collaborative working. Does it include a power allowing you to establish and support, cooperate with, join, or possibly even amalgamate with other voluntary organisations? Charities without this power usually have an implied power to work collaboratively if it is in the best interests of the organisation and its beneficiaries. The Charity Commission encourages organisations to seek advice early, particularly regarding legal and regulatory issues. So you need to think about, will collaboration add value? Will there be measurable benefits to service users and beneficiaries? Will there be cost savings for your organisation? How will collaboration affect potential income? Will the added value justify time and effort and money invested in the collaboration? Will you lose anything by working on the collaborative project? Is there a risk of mission drift? Because collaborating would mean moving away from your own organisation's main aims. And also things like long-term implications of the possible changes in structure of your organisation. And obviously things like how will it impact on existing relationships. So this going to go through some of the types of kind of shared working. There's a bit of a mix up between, you've got partnership working and then consortia. Consortia legally means something slightly different. Consortia means kind of you've actually created a new legal entity. But you'll find a lot of times the terms of partnership and consortia are used interchangeably, which is not really strictly correct, because, like I say, consortia kind of means you've created a new legal entity. Groups have come together and they've created a new legal entity. So it's you'll find a lot of times, yeah, they're used interchangeably. So in a partnership, separate organisations maintain their independence, but work jointly on some activities or functions. You can have situations where organisations with resources or expertise offer assistance to other organisations. So, for example, large organisations working with smaller local groups. Things like a parent organisation, and then you have subsidiary organisations. Mergers, when you have obviously different groups come together to create a new organisation entirely. So some of the potential benefits of collaborative working: new or improved services, possibly wider geographical reach or access to new beneficiary groups, possibly more integrated or coordinated approach to beneficiary needs, financial savings, and better use of existing resources. And obviously in that context as well, you've got the possibility of being able to apply for more funding from grant funders. Knowledge, good practice, information sharing. Possibly things like sharing the risk in new and untested projects. Things like replicating success, better coordination, competitive advantage, mutual support between organisations. So always bear in mind, ultimately, collaborative partnership working is always about making the organisation better able to meet the needs of the beneficiaries. So some of the risks to think about: outcomes do not justify the time and resources invested. Loss of flexibility in working practice. Possibly increasing the complexity of decision making and loss of autonomy. So if you think about two charities working in partnership, now you've got two boards of trustees. You have to make decisions. You have to agree on things rather, depending on the structure of the partnership. Possibly things like diverting energy and resources away from core aims, as I mentioned before, mission drift. Damage to or dilution of the brand and reputation. Damage to organisation and waste of resources if the collaboration is unsuccessful. Lack of awareness of the legal obligations. And finally, stakeholder confusion. For some of the obstacles to successful collaboration: personality. So I think that is one issue that has been possibly a problem in more groups not coming together to work in partnership, is that personalities, leading organisations don't always get along or have that level of trust between each other. And likewise, competition between partners, so competition between funding and that kind of thing. lack of information about experience. Sometimes there's a lack of knowledge about what other groups are out there doing similar work, and lack of knowledge about what partnership opportunities are actually available. Lack of resources, resistance to change. So I think in the local voluntary sector, you do tend to get some continuity. Lots of people have been leading organisations for a long time, so they might not necessarily be embracing change as required collaborative working. Cultural mismatch between organisations. Lack of consistency and clarity in roles and responsibilities. So I think I'll come on to that in a bit, but yeah, it's always good if you are going to have that partnership working, have that clear agreement about what each partner will do. And I know things like National Lottery require you, when you apply to a partnership grant at a National Lottery community fund, you do need to have those partnership agreements as part of the application. So things that can help overcome the challenges, having obviously compatible cultures or an understanding of different cultures. As I was just saying, written agreements in place, being clear and agreeing the mutual benefits and the collaborative advantage. And obviously one of those is more increasing access to funding, for example. So some of the types of partnerships, you've got informal networks, a loose network of organisations agreeing to collaborate. Some of the benefits, members retain total independence and control and manage their own contracts. Different organisations may lead on different projects and subcontract to others, spreading the risk. Often a first step to a formally constituted consortium. The downside is no legal entity for commissioners to contract with or grant funders to fund. Does not allow for coordinated service delivery. Probably one of the most common forms, lead agency, if you're applying for a grant fund, for example, you would have a lead organisation which makes the application. This means obviously able to bid for contracts and grants. It's a really good example. It's a really good way for you, for example, if one lead organisation has got a good track record of funding, they can use that to help increase success. The infrastructure, obviously, the organisation already exists. Possible downsides is the lead partner then is the one with the sole legal accountability for the contracts and grants, so they bear all the risk. And I mean, they have to make sure, then the lead partner has to make sure that the other partners are delivering on what they said they would deliver. So you can have the situation where the lead partner will say not give the funding, because obviously the funding will go to the lead partner, and then it's up to the lead partner to give the money to the other partners. So they might decide, well, if they think the other partners haven't delivered what they said they would, sort of withholding the money. So there needs to be that level of trust with the lead partner, really, that they are actually going to, or between all partners, the minor partners will actually deliver, or the non-lead partners rather, will actually deliver what they said they would deliver. And obviously the lead partner would actually provide the funding once those have been, that work's been done. So obviously with things like a risk, like the lead partner, as I kind of mentioned, might do the work in-house. possible risk with subcontractors, sub-grantees. So as I was saying, a constituted consortium is technically, legally something different, although be aware the terminology between a sort of partnership and consortium is the word to use quite interchangeably by lots of grant funders and council and stuff like that. But technically, strictly speaking, constituted consortium is a new legal entity with a membership structure owned and run by members, protecting members from risk, provides a single front door for commissioners, gives you that sort of collective bargaining power. Some of the cons, so as a new legal entity, it would mean you don't have this sort of track record in the early stages of delivering. Significant funding and time required in the development stages of the consortium, and vulnerable to fluctuations in commissioning patterns as kind of, particularly in relation to local authorities and stuff like that. Merger. I think you have seen this, particularly when there's sort of severe financial problems for organisations, that they can think about mergers. So our organisations undertake a full legal merger and become a single entity or group structure. Enables a service to continue if an organisation becomes unsustainable. And prevents duplication of services and creates efficiencies. Creates an organisation with a larger turnover, therefore creating more access to larger contracts and grants, and potentially greater profile and reach. And obviously it's something you see in the private sector all the time, mergers taking place. Probably not quite so common in the charity VCC sector. So problems, volunteer staff or financial supporters might not progress into the merged organisations, obviously leading to things like redundancies, disruptive to day-to-day business. Significant differences in culture or ways of working could prevent effective integration. And obviously it could be a very consuming process. So within partnership agreements, you have to cover quite a few areas. So purpose or aim of the partnership, who the lead partner organisation is going to be, details of each partner organisation, financial and contractual arrangements, roles and responsibilities, policies and procedures, administration, meetings and record keeping, monitoring and reporting, communications, branding, changes to the agreement, duration of the agreement, an approach to sustainability, probably meaning in terms of life beyond the particular grant funder, for example, you're applying to, signed declaration. The Charity Commission as a checklist, so I can send that. I'll send that to you as a link in the after the session. So you need to kind of do, if you are going to be working with other partners, you can kind of do due diligence. Are you satisfied with their status and governance? So you might want to look at the governing document, the proscribed organisation list. So I think that's organisations that have not been or been banned by the government, I guess. I'm not quite sure what the designated entity list is. Anyway, I'll send you more information about that charity commission. So you look at things like who are the key senior personnel. Have you checked? You need to check perhaps if they not appear in the designated individuals list. These people subject to financial restrictions in the UK. Are the organisation's size, management, and operational structure fit for purpose? Can you be reasonably sure the organisation is able to deliver the services required? How easy is it to contact the organisation's senior representatives and other key staff? Again, still keeping on the Charity Commission checklist. So look at, what do you know about the partner? Doing that sort of due diligence. Have you worked with them before? Do they have a track record? Do you have a track record of partnership working? Does your experience of working with the partner in the past raise any concerns? Are its aims and values compatible with those of your charity? So, for example, are there likely to be any language, communication, or cultural problems? Thinking about how these can be overcome. Is the partner organisation already working with other organisations? Will this present any problems? Are there arrangements in place to enable you to monitor the services that they said they will do as part of their partnership arrangement? So again, are you confident about any third parties involved in monitoring feedback? Are the partner organisation's financial controls adequate and reliable? So things like policies and procedures, managing and reporting financial resources and transactions. Are its financial policies and procedures documented? So are there policies in place? Do they have recording and audit systems in place? And are these suitable for the type of work being undertaken and the scale of funding involved? Would you be able to inspect the partner's financial records? So, for example, what annual accounts, for example, most recent accounts. Are there any concerns about banking arrangements and the movement of funds? Does the partner have adequately trained and qualified staff to manage funds, maintain accounts, and report back to you as the lead partner? How closely do this partner's senior staff monitor its more junior staff? And then going on to external risk factors. What special risk factors apply to the area in which the partner organisation will operate? Will the organisation be able to deal with these? Okay, thanks, Lisa. I'll send you the slides. So things like political, economic, and social environment. Is there any risk of instability? Obviously, things like, I think, that's kind of perhaps more like international aspect there, but things like health and safety concerns. that's when we're doing the training in real life. As I was saying, a consortium, there is a kind of move to consortiums for several reasons. So contracts being aggregated over larger geographical areas. Commissioners wish to reduce costs by holding fewer contracts or would like to work with a better coordinated provider market. Quite often you're competing against private sector providers as well. Service use can be better served by providers working more closely together. Smaller organisations lack capacity to bid for contracts and the scale required by tenders, so are excluded from bidding for contracts. Hence the importance of having a kind of work in place to go for, so that consortiums are sort of prepared to be able to bid for the opportunities when they arise. So these are just kind of, obviously this isn't quite so relevant in terms of compared to the sort of grant funding lead partner type situation. But there's some examples here of different types of consortium arrangements. So you've got the managing agent model. So yeah, an existing provider bids for contracts and then finds subcontractors to deliver the actual service. So you do have examples, I think, of some large organisations getting contracts and then sometimes getting small VCSE groups to deliver some of that work. Managing provider model. Similar, but the lead body also does some of the work. Super provider model. Organisations set up a new legal structure with collective ownership and control. So effectively becoming one large provider under a new legal entity. Hub and spoke model. Core management functions of the consortium are carried out by a central support unit or hub, leaving the providers to deliver the frontline services by being subcontracted. The central hub, that's the role of scoping for and bidding for contracts, things like influencing commissioners, developing strategic relationships, recruiting and managing the membership, establishing all the operational policies and procedures, managing contracts, exploring and raising funding where appropriate, such as development grants or repayable finance. This example, it looks like. Just an example there from NCVO, National Council of Voluntary Organisations, worth signing up for free. Well, some of the pages in NCVO are free, other pages you need to be a member, but if your income is below 30,000, you can sign up as a member for free anyway. And there's always lots of resources on there. They recommend a 10-stage process through that consortium process. And it's just got a bit more information about the process required. And examples of how some of these sort of successful consortiums, kind of things they've had in place. So things like having a working group. Having stakeholder engagement. Like I say, the consortium is slightly more complicated than just your general partnership arrangement. So yeah, anybody had any experience of successful partnership working?
Yes, and we just started working with the Assisia organization, but it's a very early days to say anything. We will see how it goes, and then we can bring you some feedback as well.
So did you get like funding as a partnership?
No, actually, I applied for them the funding. This is their very first time funding, but partnership means we're going to work together. They're going to use our allotment to deliver the project, and they will pay somebody to deliver the project as well. But in future, we will see what sort of balances. Sometimes the balance into partnerships are not a level. When there is not a level balance, then it's very hard to work with each other. I mean, like I would work full time as a organization, but he's got a family and children, so his first priority is picking up children to school, things like that. So we will see how it goes, but we are more looking for looking to work with Lisa in future. We will apply for some funding and then pay them to get some swimming sessions done by them. So that sort of partnership at the moment, we just started. So we will see how it goes. We also worked as a partnership with the big local Heston West as well. So they used to getting the big pot, and they used to give us like a small amount to deliver the projects for them. So basically you pay some another organizations to do the work for you. Something we deliver for other people as well. So now we are working ahead with the other organizations as well.
Yes, I mean, it kind of just shows how you need to have that good relationship and having those clear agreements in place as to, or the importance of having agreements in place as to who will do what.
I think it's a very early days, so we are building up a relationship with other organizations now, which is another next step moving on. So the next step I will be looking with you is like how to register CIO and the process of a CIO. If any organization has registered their charity as CIO, I would like to, if you can get me in touch with them, so I can learn something from them. I do have um, volunteers who can do the work online as well. So I can get my volunteer to get in touch with you or a trustee, and then he can do it. He can fill the information online. So that's our next step. That is our next step. But we are moving forward this year, definitely.
We are also,
sorry, go ahead, Joy.
no, we're in the process of rebranding, It's our 40th anniversary this year, and we're changing our name. We're actually in the process of registering as a CIO as well. So actually, I had a meeting this morning, but it was cancelled, and that was when we were going to fill the application in. So that's been put off till next week now. But so
Yeah, I mean, I think the CIA is fairly straightforward. They've got a template, got the template constitutions of the Charity Commission. So you just have to put in your charitable purposes and your how many minimum number of trustees, maximum number of trustees, term limits for the trustees.
right.
And then yeah, the main thing, as long as you get your charitable purposes written in a good way, I think that's sometimes the issue, that the Charity Commission will come back and say, oh, you're not meeting the requirements of your activities being charitable, because under the law only I think 13 activities are charitable.
Right.
But then they also seem sometimes come back and say, you need to get a bit more detail about the activities you're running and that kind of stuff. So I think sometimes
the constitution that we have, I mean, that's all we've got. We registered 40 years ago, so it needs updating now anyway. But I was just wondering, with us having a 40-year-old charity and changing the name,